Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today I will be doing my photo shoot makeup. So this video is going to be sped up in the video where I do talk about the photo shoot. This is just going to be an in-depth view on how I prepped my skin specifically and how I did the makeup and how I like to do makeup for when I'm going to be taking like professional photos or for events and such. So yeah, I just kind of want to get into it because this is going to be a long video of me talking, so let's get started.
So come on, give me love. I'ma show you how to move with my body. Come hit me with your touch and make me wanna say.
So in terms of my hair, this is the wig I was wearing, so we'll talk about that in the video, but this is why I'm wearing it. Usually I do my face first, but for the sake of the video, for the photo shoot video, I'm wearing it. So there's a few things that I did to prep the skin itself, but before I talk about that, I'm just gonna prep the lips by putting on a little bit of lip balm. So this is the Sephora Lip Stories lip balm in the color Do Me a Favor. The color really doesn't make a difference, it's just the lip balm that's closest to me. Now for my face, for the day of a shoot or the day of an event, I don't like to do too much in terms of masking, but there is one. For the mask that I use on the day, I use the Ole Henriksen Fat Glow Facial Mask. This is just a quick mask. It takes like 15 minutes. It's good to use before makeup and it just helps to exfoliate, but it's a light exfoliate. I do have experience with this mask, so you never want to use on the day of a mask that you're not familiar with, or skincare that you're not familiar with, or makeup in general that you're not familiar with, especially when it comes to anything exfoliating. So this I have experience with, and this is what I use beforehand. Before I use the mask, I always wash my face. So the skin cleanser that I use is the Inkey List Fulvic Acid Brightening Cleanser, and if you have seen like literally any other video where I recommend a product, you've seen this already. So that's the cleanser that I use. And then once the mask is off, I really heavily moisturize and hydrate because I have oily skin and I want the makeup to look more of a natural finish versus a matte finish, and for me to pull that off at least for a couple of hours, 4 or 5 hours, my skin has to be very hydrated. So I go in with the Fresh Rose Deep Hydration Facial Toner, and then I slather on a gel cream. Usually, in terms of gel creams, usually it's the Belief the True Cream Aqua Balm moisturizer, but this I am out of. That's for an empties video. So right now, right now and on the day, I was using the Neutrogena Hydro Boost gel cream, and I slather this on. Like I put some in, rub it in, and then I put a little bit more on, kind of like a moisture mask. And then I used a brightening hydrating eye cream, so nothing with retinol in it, or nothing, no sleep mask, just something to help brighten the under eye. So I used the Farsali Haldi Eyes. I don't think you can get this anymore, but it doesn't have to be this specifically. You can also use the Ordinary Caffeine solution. This you have to you have to make sure that this is sunken. You have to make sure that this is sunken in, or the makeup could skip over it. Just for what I did use on the day, I used the Haldi Eyes because it's got a gold pigment and it helps reflect light back. at you, so it's kind of like a highlighter 2-in-1. So that's what I used under the eyes. And then very importantly, I let everything sit for 20 minutes. That's the part that makes the difference. I had let the skincare sit for at least 15-20 minutes. So while I let it sit, I was picking out my outfits for the shoot and packing those, and then I fixed my hair, and once that was done, everything was sunken in, and I did my makeup. Now, I didn't do all of that today because I'm re-filming this process because on the day of I was running late, so I did that. Imagine that my skin is now set and moisturized. Now, even though I did moisturize, I do prime for this process. So what I used the Milk Hydro Grip Primer. And then I used a little bit of the Farsali Skin Tune Blur. Now again, I don't think you can get Farsali products. So this, essentially, I use this for pore issues. So I either mix this into my foundation or I put it just directly on my skin. Right now I don't have anything else that I would recommend, but if you have a pore filling primer or a blurring primer that doesn't, a pore filling primer or a blurring primer that's not dimethicone based, I would recommend for this. Otherwise, skip it. I don't prefer dimethicone based pore fillers because the makeup slips, and I'm going for a more dewier look, and I have oily skin, so I don't need slippage. So you could just skip this step if you don't have this or something similar. Okay, so now that the skin is adequately prepped, well, it's not, I lied. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, and you may have seen this method, I learned this from Jackie Aina, is I'm going to set my primer with a powder, and this is going to be a matte powder, a matte loose powder. So you can take a sponge, but I use a puff like this. Mine's dirty, but hold it like this, dip into the powder, and then press. Now you can keep this to just your problem areas or go pretty much all around the face, but there you go. The face should be matte. So the powder I used was the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Powder in Banana. You don't have to use that. Use your favorite matte loose powder. Now for this video I will be telling you what I'm using, but it's not necessarily the product itself, it's the type of product that matters. So usually I show my brushes and stuff. I probably won't. I will just tell you the type of brush that you would need for the process, just so you don't feel pressured, because you can do this without using the specific product. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to set the powder. Now this is an extra step. This helps to prolong this. So this is what's going to keep that, this is what's going to help keep you matte or help control the oil. But this step will also start transitioning us into that natural makeup look, because right now I look matte, obviously. So we're going to be using the Airbrush Flawless Setting Spray Party All Night, Stay All Day by Charlotte Tilbury. You don't need to use this specifically. It needs to be a makeup setting spray that prolongs the longevity of makeup. That's all it needs to be. So to apply this, I spray it directly to my face, and then I go back in with my puff and press it in. Now, pressing in your setting spray, especially the longevity ones, is what will take your makeup to the next level. I also learned this from Jackie Aina. This actually helps set your makeup and make that layer form. Otherwise, if you're just spraying it on and you let it dry, it's more or less just oxidizing with the, sorry, not oxidizing, evaporating off your face. So to keep most of it, you want to press it in. Now, it stands to reason that when you do this, the puff or sponge or whatever you're using will pick up the product, obviously. So I do go in heavy with it. I may do 1 or 2 layers as well. Alright, so I know that's a lot of steps to make it look like I did nothing. However, we did. Now, today I am not carving out, that's a lie. I'm still going to carve out my brows, but I'm not going to carve them out with a highlighted shade. Today we're going to use a skin tone shade for the more natural look. So I'm getting a spoolie eyebrow brush. So it just has a spoolie and an eyebrow end. Flick these hairs up. Now, I don't want my eyebrows to look too Instagram carved. They're basically gonna look like this by the end of the day. But so my eyebrows, I'm trying to stay as true to what my natural eyebrows look like, so I'm just following that. So typically when I do this method, I go in with a slanted shader brush, like a flat shader brush, such as this one that's dirty. But I will not be doing that today because I don't want it crispy. I just went in with the actual doe foot, and if you don't use a concealer that has a doe foot, then you're gonna need to use a brush. But if you're using a concealer that has a doe foot and you do apply it to your face, I just cut them very kind of precise with this. This is the NYX HD Studio Photogenic Studio Concealer in 7.5. This is my skin shade concealer. It's a very lightweight concealer, very affordable, and I don't use a skin shade concealer often. Usually I just use foundation, full coverage foundation, but for things like this, or if I really want to spot conceal, that's what I use that for. Again, doesn't have to be that. So I'm using my Morphe E8 brush. This is my concealer brush, and I'm just going to blend out this line. Basically, all I'm doing is making sure that there is makeup right up to my eyebrows without getting into my eyebrows. And this will allow me to then put on my foundation without having to worry about it. That is literally all this step is for. You can do this fairly messily. It's all good. You could even do this with your foundation, but I have a concealer, so I did that. Let's talk about the actual foundation. The foundation that I love for this is the Makeup Forever Reboot foundation. It's a very nice, natural, dewy, full coverage, well, medium to full coverage foundation. It even says it brightens, smooths, firms, hydrates, evens out. It's a very nice foundation, and for those of you that have oily skin, it's a nice natural foundation that does have some capabilities of keeping oil at bay. The color that I have here is Y503. I'm going to be mixing that with a little bit of the Charlotte Tilbury Flawless filter. The name's rubbed off of this, but this is in the color dark. It comes in a, this is a really big complexion booster. I would even, if you're gonna purchase this, I would even recommend getting the mini of this, because I don't use much of this at all, and it's like bigger than my foundation. Anyways, comes with a doe foot, and I'm just gonna apply a little bit to, now you can see this is not a highlight shade, but it has highlighting factors and it pulls a little bit more orange, so I do bring it under the eyes a bit because it helps color correct. So if you have issues that need color correction, I would go with this instead of a heavy duty color corrector, because that's not really the vibe we're going for today. So I just plop that on where I want it, and then the foundation, about a pump and a half, and okay, 2 pumps. Alright, this is the Farsali Liquid Glass Radiance Skin Serum with hyaluronic acid. If you don't have this, something that you could use is the Makeup Forever Ultra HD Skin Booster. This is just going to help kind of sheer out the foundation, make it just a little bit dewier. So you don't have to use it specifically, you can use that, because I know this isn't. I just need a little bit. This is just going to give the foundation a nice finish. Or a nicer finish. The finish of the foundation is great, you could just use that. You don't even need the glow booster. But I'm going for a very on-camera, editorial, ethereal kind of look. Alright, so I'm using the Alamar Cosmetics bronzer brush. You need a flat kabuki brush is basically it. You don't need to use this one specifically, just flat kabuki. It could even be a domed kabuki, but just a kabuki brush. And in a pouncing kind of stippling motion, we are blending this out. And you can go up to the eye section. Usually I avoid that, but today, because of the glow booster corrector, we are going up there. And you see, I didn't go full coverage. You can kind of see some of my scarring still, because I wanted to look more natural for this. Kind of the point of this shoot was to embrace your natural beauty, but at the same time you don't want like all of your insecurities on show, because then you just won't like the photos altogether. So yeah, there's a fine balance between the two, but having not full coverage is kind of how I've went with that. Now my under eyes are basically concealed. Now I know on camera this probably does look full coverage, but I promise you I can still see quite a bit through it. You see that natural shift? That's what we're going with. We're gonna do a little bit of concealer, and I do mean a little bit. This is the Hourglass Vanish Concealer in the color Maple. You don't need to use this. This is an expensive concealer. I also would recommend the L'Oreal Infallible Full Wear Concealer. This is the More Than Concealer. The colors of this that I use are 410 and 415. You can also use the CoverGirl True Blend Undercover Concealer. This is for, I use this color for extreme highlighting, so this is Warm Honey that I have here. I would go down a color, like deeper in color with that. You can also use the NYX HD Studio Photogenic Concealer. I just don't have this in a highlighter shade. And one of my all-time favorites is the Born This Way Multi-Use Sculpting Concealer, and I use Butterscotch. It doesn't have to be this, but this is the concealer I'm going to use. So because the under eyes are already concealed, we're just brightening. So a little bit. So peep where I put it. Basically where I put the color corrector. We're gonna go back in with my concealer brush. So to blend out the mouth corners, you want to blend inwards to the mouth. When I blend out the nose highlight, I always flick it up. And that just gives the perfect amount of highlight to the bridge instead of putting actual highlighter on the bridge. And then the eye. If you've ever seen the Instagram trend where they change where you place your highlighter, so instead of doing the full triangle, you just do here and here, and then they blend it out in a triangle anyways, and you go, okay, so then what's the difference? You're supposed to blend this section in around the inner corners. You do not pass the center of your eyelid, and you do not come all the way down to here. It's kind of just to like your nose. Blend here. And then for the outer portion, you blend, again, don't come into the center, blend and bring it out. And you blend it right here. Now, if you're the type of person that has severe discoloration under the eye, you're gonna be like, okay, well then I'm gonna have this patch right here. You can either use a skin tone colored concealer and just place it in that bald spot, or you can use something like the Charlotte Tilbury illuminating booster and put it there, or put it down first and then do the highlighting like I did just now, and that will give you that effect that they are looking for. That skin booster is great because it doesn't have mica glitters in it. It's just illuminating, so you can use it under the eyes, no problem. Because I wanted this to last long, I did use I used the cream blush. My two favorites are Sandy Cheeks Cream Blush Light from Melt and Rare Beauty Liquid Blush in Love. I'm gonna use the Melt one today. Now, this is where the makeup and how we did the makeup is imperative. So because this is not full coverage, I can still see natural parts of my face, including where I blush. And yes, I have darker skin. I do have natural occurring blush. So I'm looking at my face. It is right here. Now you can apply blush however you want. You can do the lifting, you can make your face look more full, whatever. I just want to apply blush where I naturally blush. That is my goal. So take this part with a grain of salt, but I'm going to be putting blush right here. Kind of up here, but basically in here. Up to my nose bridge, in here. And a little bit into my eyelids. So to do that, you can use a fluffy brush like this. This is the Morphe R3. You can use a more precise fluffy brush. This is the Luxie 520 tapered highlighter brush. Another type of brush you can use is the brightening brush by Alamar Cosmetics, which looks like this. It's like a flat fluffy brush, but I recommend something more fluffy. And basically I just tap the brush. This is the Luxie brush. Tap the brush here and then very lightly tap through where I said I was going to. I think the way you naturally blush is just so much more youthful. So there are applications to make your face look more lifted. There are applications to make your face look more rounded, but then there are applications to make your face look more youthful, and that is just mimicking what is already going on your face. So I have my blush on, and this isn't the only blush I'm going to be doing, but this will also make it look like you're not wearing foundation, because you can see your natural flush come in. And I do take it up into my eyes, because my natural flush goes into my eyes and on my chin and some in my forehead. So here we are. We're going to now use that Charlotte Tilbury spray again at this point. So I'm using this on top of my cream products. If you cream bronze or cream contour, you can do that and then this. I didn't cream contour bronze for this look because I didn't have any at the time. Going forward, I probably would, but I'm showing you what I did in the photo. I kind of want to try a cream bronzer, so let's do that. This, keep in mind, I didn't do it on the day. This is the iconic London sheer bronze in the color Spiced Tan, so it looks like this. I'm gonna go very lightly with this because I've never used it, and I would still use a kind of fluffy brush. So this is the Luxie 522 tapered highlighter. I'm gonna put a little bit of the product on the tip of this. So anytime I use a liquid product like this, I will run it in the brush so that there isn't any spots that have a lot versus spots that have little. And then the idea would be to then layer bronzer above it. Be careful with the brush. Because with flimsier brushes, you do lose some of the control that you would get with a stiffer brush, but for cream products, especially if you don't want to disturb what's going on underneath, or if you don't want to disturb what's underneath, or you don't want to accidentally put on too much, a fluffier, sparser brush helps with that. So it's kind of preference. You can do a smaller fluffy brush to help give you more control, but I do still recommend a fluffy brush over a stiff brush, just to help control the amount of product, because you can go very, very far with it's much easier to apply too much cream than it is to apply too much powder. So keep that in mind. Now that that's done, and I like it, I do like the product. It does give you a shadow when you're not looking at it head on, but when you're looking at it head on, it's not so harsh, so that's great. At this point, this is when I spray again the Charlotte Tilbury setting spray. And also melt all of the creams together. And when you melt all of your makeup together and it's all seamless, it looks like your face, because your face doesn't really have those harsh definition lines. Everything just kind of melds into each other. Yes, I know this takes quite some time, and it's taking longer because I'm talking through it, but we're gonna move on to brows. I know I haven't set my face yet, just want to give it a second. So I'm using a brow powder. You do not need to use this one. This is the Convertible Brow Wet Dry Convertible Powder and Pomade by the Brow Gal. It's broken. I've had this for quite some time. You don't have to use this, but I do recommend powder for this, just because powder gives it just a bit more natural. So I have fuller brows, and the idea is to kind of, I want them to look like this, just a little bit more refined. I need it balanced with the face. If you have sparser brows, use what feels more comfortable for you. But if you're just trying to fluff up your natural brow hairs, powder is the most natural for that. If you want it to be more sleek and defined, or you're trying to cover more area, then I would go for either like a pen brow or like a pomade. So this is going to be a little bit more up to circumstance. But I'm just going into this dark color here, and my eyebrow brush, and I'm kind of tapping and swiping to get the color on, and I'm lining the underneath, the lowest part. Then I'm going to the top part of the brow, but not to the front, kind of sort of in the middle of the flat. And the way I'm holding the brush is not directly straight on, it's more flat, kind of at an angle. So if this is my eyebrow, instead of being straight on it, I'm down and kind of scratching the surface. This will give a more of a blurred line instead of a precise line. It just helps with the blending. And then I'm just gonna quickly throw just a little bit of the powder through the brow. Up to the front, and I'm lightly throwing powder through the front here. And take your time with this, because I strongly I urge to stay away from carving it out to correct it. Now, to blend this, and this is also why I like powders, because it's easier to do with this, I'm going to take the spoolie, and starting from the back, I'm gonna mess this up basically. You don't want to be too rough, but you do need to scratch the surface enough to blend the powder. And I'm gonna flick the hairs back up, try to stay within the actual brow, or you're gonna scratch the foundation concealer situation below it. Alright, I'm going in with a clear brow gel. I'm not going to show you this too tough because it's a clear brow gel that I've had for some time, so it's not clear anymore. This is the Essence Lash and Brow Gel Mascara Style and Comb. So you can use any brow gel. I don't even really love this brow gel, but it's a very basic clear brow gel, so it works for what it's cost. Dollar for dollar, it does what it needs to. Now for the face, I'm going to be using a few powders, but no loose powder. This is a little bit excessive. You do not need to do this. Realistically, you could use one of these powders and accomplish everything. You don't have to use all three of these powders. I just have them in different colors, and some of them can't be applied the other way around, so yeah. Now, dollar for dollar, I don't love this powder, and on top of that, if you drop it, it's game over, as I just did. This is the Pat McGrath Labs Skin Fetish Sublime Perfection Blurring Under Eye Setting Powder in the color Deep, and I broke in this just now because I just dropped it. So that's what we've got left. It's good. I like it for what it does, but dollar for dollar. And how fragile it is, I just think you could get something else. But, so we're gonna use this to set my under eye. And I'm just gonna use my concealer brush and kind of tap onto one of these broken blocks. Go in. And I do find for this to actually like set properly, like you really got to get product onto your brush. You got to get into this pan and get product onto your brush, or it is not going to do much. But it is beautiful under the eyes. My only issue is that it is so fragile. Okay, so I set the entire like eye area with this. I can even bring it down into my nasolabial folds down in here. All that. Cool. So we're set on the eyes. And the thing about this powder is even though it's set, it doesn't look matte. Still got some kind of movement, luminosity to it. So that's the first powder. And again, you don't need to use this. You can use whatever powder you like putting under your eyes. Just aim for something that's not too matte. Because the combination of light concealer as well as that powder, there will be minimal creasing. And I say minimal because it's hard to get rid of all creasing because the expressions and whatnot. Alright, my favorite, or one of my favorite powders, is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish Powder. I use this for the center, like, almost dropped that too. I use this for the highlighted portions of my face. Now, I could use this all over my face, but one, it's expensive, and two, this color is a little too light, and this isn't dark. For like my face, I would prefer it not be so light. I could use it all over my face, but like I have options. So you could use this all over your face. You can buy just the one color, use it all over your face. But I can't use this under my eyes. So it's too dark under my eyes, but it's a little too light for the face. My other suggestion, what I will be using for my face, the rest of my face, is the Sephora Micro Smooth in Tan. Now, before I get into those other two powders, I like to keep the layer of powders down to a minimum. So we need to set, I set the blush with powder blush and the bronzer with powder bronzer, and then I go in between and do the other things. So the blush, actually let's start with the bronzer. The bronzer that I use, my favorite, is by Fenty Beauty, and this is the Sunstalker Instant Warmth Bronzer. This is in Cocoa Naughty. Looks like that. Now the brush that I use for bronzer is this, and I don't know where else you can get this kind of shaped brush from. This is the Morphe E51, and it's a fluffy, like really fluffy angled brush. So if you look at it at all sides, it's a powder brush, but it's been cut on an angle. And I apply the bronzer down here, push it into the hollows of my face, and it applies, and then the rest of these bristles will blend out and disperse the bronzer. So let's, and I always start with bronzer and then do blush. Just so that my bronzer doesn't go up too high. And in a tapping fashion, and hugging, and do the rest. So this is where I'll I'll start doing my nose. I can't find any of the brushes that I would use to do this, but today we're going to be using, this is the Real Techniques medium shadow brush. This is not the style of brush that I would typically recommend for this. It can work. I found a brush. It's dirty currently. This is the M576. It's a really large fluffy brush. Yeah, so it's a really large fluffy brush. This is the type of brush that I would use, but you can also use something like this. It's a really fluffy, big shadow shader brush. So what I would do with this is apply it to the tip of the flat side, and then, so there's a product, flip it, and apply it into the nose hollow. And I bring this up into my eyebrow. And down the nose. See? And I'm using my bronzer for this because it will help balance the face, 1, and 2, I don't want a harsh contour. And I don't go all the way throughout my nose because, like I said, I am just doing this to balance the face, really. Not to shape the nose, but I'm going into my brows, flicking up through the front of them. They should be dry. And that blends that in. Starting in, so you want to feel where your orbital bone is. Starting in the outer corner of that with the brush, the product on the brush, same place, but up. We're gonna start contouring the eye. And flick it out underneath the orbital bone. I also threw a bit of bronzer right below my lips to accentuate them. Now for blush, the one I used on the day was the Laura Geller Baked Blush and Brighten in Tropic Hues. This is an illuminating blush. It looks like that. Today I want to try a new one. This might be a little too metallic, but this is the Melt Digital Dust Highlight in Phoenix. For powder blush, I use a powder brush. Now, this might be huge for some, but I have a lot of cheek real estate and I want a light application, so fluffy blush or brush as so works. I can use a powdered brush because, like I said, I have a lot of cheek real estate. If you have smaller cheeks or you're focusing on a smaller area, still a fluffy brush but smaller, so you want it to fit on the apples. So I'm gonna use the Laura Geller blush and start here, and I'm tapping over everything, so even over the bronzer. But let's add a little bit of the Melt Phoenix because I didn't use this on the day. I just got this, so I'm just curious. Oh yeah, that's pretty. It is much more sheeny because it's supposed to be a copper highlighter. But I do like that. I don't put on too, I don't want it to be like too blushy. Just make it look like I'm naturally flush. Here is the Charlotte Tilbury. I'm gonna use something, I use a brush similar to what I use for liquid blush. So I have another. This is the Luxie 660 Precision Foundation Brush. So this is like the blush brush. The brush that I use for blush is just a little bit bigger. Alright, so just in here, and I'm gonna very precisely tap all over the highlighted parts. And this is a translucent powder, so don't you worry about all the colors we just put down. Because what this is going to do is smooth those as well. So I don't take this all the way up the cheek, I just want it here where my pores are. Like that. Over the lip. And on the chin. And now into my Sephora. I use the same type of brush as my bronzer. This is the Morphe E51 brush. I just like that I can push product into my face with this type of brush, so you can use a flat top brush or a large kabuki brush to do this as well, but because it's also still kind of flimsy, it doesn't do too much powder, so there's a fine line. So if you use a kabuki brush, just put less product on the brush. But I'm just going to pat in, and I am going over the bronzer a bit with like the little excess. I do go over the highlighted parts. This is kind of to veil and make sure everything is copacetic. It's a little hard to find highlighters like this. This is the Patrick Star MAC collaboration. So this is the Mineralized Skin Finish and Baby It's Gold Outside. The Mineralized Skin Finish highlighters are one of my favorites in terms of not looking like a glittery bomb. It's a nice natural highlighter, so it doesn't have to be this color, but I have a pan this big, so I try to work down in it, and I have made no debts, and I use this all the time. So it doesn't have to be this color, because this color is not available anymore. You can get another mineralized skin finish. You want to use a more natural looking highlight, and highlight. Now the reason I am doing this before I set my foundation is because I don't want it to be blinding. I just want this to be natural, and I want to then I want to put my setting spray on and have the setting spray melt this into the rest of the makeup, and then everything will just look seamless, and it'll just look glowy instead of powdery. If you want the highlighter to pop more, then put it on after you spray, and it'll stick to the spray and it'll be more amplified. That's not the look I'm going for today. It's very light, natural kind of highlight. Now for the nose, I highlight the bridge and then bring it up. I would only recommend doing it with this because it's more of a natural highlight versus something that is very glittery. I would not do this method with. Looks like that. Now, this is a new spray. This is the Hourglass Veil Soft Focus Setting Spray. This is good. You can't even see. But this is good for melting the powders together and giving that soft focus look. just put it on and I'm gonna let it kind of absorb some of the makeup. Because this setting spray is not for longevity purposes, I don't press it in right away, so I'm just gonna let it absorb some of the makeup, some of the powder, do its thing, look gorgeous. And we're gonna go in with another layer and I will press it in. Lightly, please. Like, this shouldn't really disturb your makeup if you're doing it lightly, so there is no rhyme or reason as to where to pat first. Just be gentle. With the brush that I used with my Charlotte Tilbury powder, I'm just going to go in and tap where things are too dewy. Like here. Now you can do just about anything on the eyes. I like to keep it fairly like minimal. The palette that I used on the day is the Tarte Toasted palette. Looks like that. Some palettes I recommend. So I'm just gonna show you some palettes that I recommend that are especially darker girl friendly. Starting with my favorite one, and the only reason I didn't use this on the day is because I couldn't find it. But my favorite is the Pure Soiree Diaries palette. This is like one of my favorite neutral palettes. Another good one, the Dose of Colors Sassy Siennas. You can even do baked browns, but I don't have that. Looks like that. Several of the Huda Beauty palettes, so the browns as well as the nude palettes. So I have Nude Rich, I have Nude Medium, Toffee, and Chocolate Brown, all of which are good, like natural nude. One of my favorite that I used all through Halloween is the Warrior 2 by Juvia's Place. Looks like that. And I use this palette all the time. It still looks like I haven't really touched it. And if you're going for something a little bit more cool tone, this is the Tarte Clay Play palette. I use this quite a bit during Halloween too, but this is more of a cool tone sculpting type of situation, but you can use that as well. Any sort of palette that is more like a neutral, everyday kind of situation for you, that is what we're going for. I'm going to use the Tarte palette because that's what I used. I'm using a natural hair blending brush. This is the R38 by Morphe, and we're going to start with Warmth, the color Warmth in this palette, which is this warm kind of orange brown shade. And I'm gonna just look forward because I have hooded eyes, so look forward and just put that right above the crease. I'm taking this in to my nose contour. You can see, bringing it right into that nose contour. Like I said, everything is pretty much blended together. I'm gonna go into the color Cozy, so the next dark color, and in the outer corner and into the crease. Same brush, like I said. Doesn't need to be too precise. If this brush is too big though, then size down, but still a fluffy brush. Nonetheless, nothing too precise. And we're doing more of a rounded shape, nothing really pulled out. And I'm even going like onto the lid kind of. So I'm not really worried about the lid being bare. I need a liner brush or a stiff flat brush, whichever. This specifically is more of a liner brush because it is slightly angled. This is the Real Techniques definer brush. And I'm gonna go into Fireside and try not to poke my eyes out. Fireside is the darkest color in this palette, darkest matte color in the palette. And I'm just going to press this along my waterline almost all the way to the inner corner. And I'm not winging this, I'm just stamping it along the lash line. So I'm gonna go in with the fluffy brush that I mentioned from before on the tip of it and go and blend. I'm going to use the Marc Jacobs gel liner, and this is just going to add a little bit more definition to this line. Just tight lined the outer portion, and then I'm going to go right on the edge. So taking that same pencil liner, I'm just going to line the inner on both sides on just the outer corner. So this is just going to connect the top and the bottom. Take the definer brush in that dark color, Fireside. And smoke it out just a little bit. Look, so I'm going to take that blending brush, that same small blending brush, and I'm actually going to go into Warmth and blend it out a little. In this palette, there is a slightly shimmery beige shade, and that is Sunrise. So we're going to use Sunrise and a little bit of Sunset mixed together. That's going to be the lid shade. So you can use any fluffy eyeshadow shader brush. This is the Urban Decay Naked 2 shadow brush because I kept the brush. You don't need to carve out the lid. You can actually leave it as is, but I like a little bit more brightness to the look. So I'm just going to mix Sunrise and Sunset and pat this on the lid. And kind of blend with the surrounding colors, and I'm only going about 2/3 of the way in. So if any of the blender brushes that you were using previously, just blend backwards so that the lid color is blended in. I don't use a sparkly color or a highlighter. I'm just going to use a lip brush, and I'm going to go into the color S'more from this palette, which is this beigey cream matte shade, and tap this in the inner corner. This is just to open up the inner corner. When it comes to taking photos, you want to use things that reflect light and amplify your eye color. Two things for brown eyes would be copper and purple, both of which I'm going to use. And that is just to help make your eyes kind of sparkle. To finish up the eyes, I'm going to curl them, and like I said, I'm not doing lashes. So I'm going to use the Lancome Monsieur Big mascara first. That's the first coat. Then we're going to go in with the L'Oreal Telescopic mascara. So just kind of reapply the Monsieur Big at the base of the lashes to make it thicker. but I combed all the way out with the telescopic to make them longer. So I only do bottom lashes if I do a smoked out bottom liner, and I only do it where that liner is. So because the liner is just in the outer corners, I just did the in the outer corners, and that just makes everything look full and rounded. This will also help change eye shape. So if you have heavier concentrated lashes on the outside and then nothing, it's going to be wider out here and then taper in. So that just helps give you that almond look, or reinforce the almond look if you already have it. Last thing is lips. You could do whatever your favorite nude combo is. On that day, I did a glossy lip, so I lined with Live Glam Pecan Pie lip liner or Cork lip liner or One Day Beauty lip liner. I can't remember, but it's a color like this. So start with, I'm not overlining, just kind of lining my natural line and then coloring in almost all of it. And then I'm going in with the Nude Sticks Magnetic Lip Plush Paint in Waikiki Rose. And you can leave it at that, but I think a glossy lip kind of just looks more youthful and pretty. So on top of that, when I did this combo, it was a little too pink, so I went in with a nude gloss. This is the Flesh Fantasy Lust Gloss by Pat McGrath. And that just made the color a little bit more nude. And that is all. So that is the full makeup look. And remember, you can add whatever you want to this that makes you feel beautiful. That's kind of the point of the photo shoot, but this is how I prepared for the photo shoot, and this is kind of what I go for in terms of full face for pictures or for an event. So if you do, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.